Very good evening to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for taking out time to be with us today. The new normal has created multiple webinars, I know, but I'm sure that all of you who have joined today are very interested in the subject. And we promise that this is going to be a really engaging and interesting session. The MLF is a social entrepreneurial wing of the MCCI. Our endeavor has been to organize useful and engaging events for you, even through the virtual life that we're all living these days. Our two guests for today need no introduction. They're icons of success and excellence in their respective field. Interior design as a subject is extremely dear to many of us. Having functional and well-planned spaces which are reflective of our individual styles is what we all look forward to in our homes. We will have a lot of time at the end of the session for Q&A. So I would request you to, put your questions in the chat window and make it a very engaging session. I would like to introduce Shraddha Maniktala ji, our moderator for this webinar. Shraddha is a Kolkata-based fashion designer with an established label, Shraddha Maniktala, which was formed in 2004. Inspired by Indian embroidery, her garments have an international appeal and have made a place for themselves in several trousseaux. Her lifelong interest in fashion has made her combine styling and blogging skills. She has styled celebs like Raima Sen and Rituparna Sen Gupta, to name a few. Shraddha has done many pop-ups and events, including one for Bottega Veneta as well. A very warm welcome to you, Shraddha. We're very delighted to have you here, and over to you.
So much. Thank you for the introduction. I would like to introduce Rupandi Shah. Rupandi Shah and Associates is a boutique design firm based out of Kolkata, headed by Rupandi Shah, who has almost 30 years of professional experience in residential, corporate, educational projects, and medical spaces. Rupande has earned a Master's of Architecture at Pratt Institute at USA. She has also worked in the USA for rehabilitating the homeless and has done projects for the underprivileged sections of society. Her exposure and work experience in the West, combined with her Indian background, allows us to bring on board a very unique international design perspective and sensibility. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Shraddha, and thank you to all of y'all. Very happy to be here among all of y'all, and I look forward, as Snigdha has said, to a very interesting and interactive evening with us.
So I would like to proceed with the first question. The pandemic has given to us the need to have multifunctional spaces at home for remote working and learning from home. How can we maximize these spaces to suit the new normal?
You know, Shraddha, I think all of us have gone through a phase which we had never even imagined we would be going through. And it's unprecedented, right? We don't have any past experiences or past examples to fall back on and derive our design solutions from something that has been done in the past. So we are not reinventing the wheel. We are actually inventing the wheel, how it should be done now.
Yes.
All of us have realized the need of different activities being segregated in our houses now. Okay, with these number of webinars that take place and number of calls, Zoom calls, and interactive sessions that we have all attended, spoken at, and been a part of, we have realized that we need that little quiet corner in our houses or in our spaces to be able to have that me time over there. Yes. Besides that, people have realized that you have to do a lot of activities when the rest of the family is also around. Like, you might want to do your yoga now, which earlier one would have had that separate time because there were other family members not using the same space at that point. So these kind of things have now interlinked. And these are what makes us realize that we do need to have segregated, well-defined spaces for different activities. So it's very important now when I think anybody wants to do a new planning for their house and all, to keep in mind all the activities, and even if the spaces are not very large, the houses need to be designed in such a way that the spaces spill into one another. There is a movement of seamless space that goes through the house, But at the same time, there is segregation, which I would call it as invisible segregation in that sense. So it's very important to have that now. I know of dining tables that have coupled up as workstations, or bedrooms that have now become dance studios, because that's where people are doing things that they are supposed to be doing. So I think these past 4 months of the pandemic are going to make us rethink how we would like to plan spaces for our clients, and for clients who would now need to very clearly assess their needs out of the built space that they live in.
Right. So for some of us, like you said, we need to, define our spaces. We may need to buy some furniture, and depending on the current situation, we may not want to invest much. So could you tell us some budget-friendly, clever options to invest in?
Well, it's a very tricky question, but it first depends upon what is the kind of stuff that you're looking at buying. There are contraptions that a center table functions as a study table. So you have these automatic hinges and these channels that you can increase and decrease the heights of the same table. So instead of talking about buying new furniture, which you need the space in your house to accommodate, I would say the existing furniture needs to get revamped to be able to be multifunctional and to be able to be used for variety of places. One of the age-old favorite piece of furniture which doubles into two effects is a sofa cum bed. Where places have been small, we've had a sofa cum bed put in such a way that it's used as a bed at a later stage during the later hours of the evening. And during the day, it is still used as a couch. So this is one of the most famous age-old contraption that has been designed to be multifunctional. And now people have designed and started realizing the need for multifunctional furniture. And quite a bit of it would have to be customized. I don't think it would be very easy to buy things outright like that, but customization is going to give a whole new angle and a vision to your existing furniture places.
Right. Okay. So what is your opinion? One should splurge or save? Suppose they are looking to redo their old house, like their own house, or they are planning the interiors of a new home. So should they go all out and splurge, or should they save? Because this is such a tricky period in life.
I think balance is most important thing, because I don't think it is either of the two extremes would work. Certain things that I've just mentioned about how a center table can double up as a study table, where the heights can be increased and decreased. They are expensive fittings. So if one would try to get a cheap modification of that done, it wouldn't work. So if you want your spaces and your pieces of furniture to work correctly, you need the right technical support, for which you cannot save. You have to splurge on those. However, where you can save are the outer finishes, which are aesthetically, the skin of the product, which can be modified at a later stage if you feel that you would want to spruce it up a little more. For example, you might say that, okay, I would just do a tabletop with plain veneer today, but tomorrow when things improve and you feel that you want to indulge yourself slightly, that same veneer can be inlaid with some mother of pearl or semi-precious stone and given it a more interesting twist, a more elaborate and a more opulent twist, I would say. But I would not ever recommend anybody to save on the hardware meaning the hardcore stuff that requires to get done for any piece of furniture or any kind of a house. Aesthetics, the softer parts, you can easily save. So as far as I'm concerned, I would take a balanced approach between splurge and save.
Okay, that's a nice point. So urban life always kept us very busy, and we still look forward to going out and spending time outdoor. So how can we create this outdoor at homes now that we are yearning to be outdoor? How can we do it?
Well, the first thing that you can do is bring in some indoor plants. Now, interestingly, what has been also, a lot of study has been done And this is not the study that I'm talking that has been done because of the pandemic, but otherwise also there are varieties of indoor plants which actually bring in oxygen and purify air within the house. The standard notion that indoor plants are difficult to maintain, they will not grow well because they don't have the light and ventilation or sunlight and all, is actually a little, I would say, not accurate. You know, there are specific varieties of plants which are specifically for indoors. In fact, these varieties of plants, if you put them outdoors, they would probably not even survive.
Yes.
And some of these plants do have a very positive and rejuvenating effect in the environment. So that is what you should first bring in. It is not only going to be purifying your air, but it's also going to be bringing in the freshness. And you will see the big difference that just one plant in your living room corner can make to the whole house.
Right.
So I think that you should start off with. You could even start off with smaller versions of maybe bonsais or things like that, where it is easier to maintain, it's easier to move around, but it brings in that freshness. It's a touch of nature that you want to bring back inside your house.
Okay. But you know, whenever at least I think of indoor landscaping, I've heard people say that you know, when you have plants in the house, it's very difficult to look after these things. So could you suggest simple ways to look after indoor landscaping?
Well, you know, you have to get the right plant for indoors. So
Like
for example, if you get a bamboo, or if you get you know, an erica, or you get a ficus to be put indoors, they will not survive. You have to get the plants which grow indoors. And a simple plant like money plant, which grows indoors beautifully, does not need any too much of light or sunlight or watering, can be very easily put into specific corners or specific areas, which will enhance your room itself. And they're not very difficult to maintain or difficult to take care of. So I think the clarity of what plant to be used where has to be very precise. It's only then would you get the right results for the place.
Okay, that's very useful. Sustainability is the mantra for today. Many people are opting out for environment-friendly options and other alternate materials. Could you tell us your views on this sustainability?
I'm a big one on sustainability. So I don't know where to start, but I have done so much of intensive research on sustainable materials and sustainable environment. So there is a word that that I have been reading and we have been talking about. It's called ESID, which means environmentally sustainable interior designing. Okay. Now you can cover up from your ceilings to your floors, to your walls, to your furniture, to the fabrics that you use with sustainable designs, material. Now, one clarity I would like to point out over here is that when we're talking about sustainable material, we are not only talking about sustainable material in terms of environmentally sustainable. It also needs to be sustainable for the people. And that is the most important thing. Like you might find a product which is brilliantly sustainable, but is available in France. To bring it into India, it's not a sustainable option. So when we are talking about sustainability, we are talking about locally available products, easily available products, and easily approachable products. Now, when you'll start talking about sustainability, I know, there are a lot of misconceptions that people have. I'd like to clear a very big misconception that most people have about cotton. I'm not I don't want to get against the cotton lobby, but I'll just like to tell you all that, people think that cotton is very environmentally sustainable and it's eco-friendly and everything. However, cotton is one of the most unsustainable materials that we would use as a design person. In the production of cotton, the maximum amount of pesticides and insecticides are needed to be used. So as an example, the total consumption of pesticides in the world, 25% of that goes into the cotton industry. which is huge. Only 75% is left for the rest of all the industries. So 25% of cotton pesticides go there, and huge amount of insecticides also. The use of water is to a massive proportion when cotton is needing to be manufactured. It requires something like 750 gallons of water to produce 2 meters of cotton. So the general thought process that cotton is very environmentally sustainable is actually a misconception. It is very environmentally friendly because when you're using cotton, it breathes. It allows you to breathe, and it allows your body to breathe. It allows your furniture and your curtains and everything to breathe. However, it is not an environmentally sustainable product because of the amount of water, insecticide, and pesticide it uses. Instead, alternatives like linen or jute, these are much more environmentally sustainable fabrics that one should think about using in your projects. I'm sorry. So, when we start off with environmentally sustainable projects, materials, I think we would need probably a couple of hours discussion onto it. The second thing I'd like to actually mention is a lot of people relating to my field of interior designing, a lot of people are not aware that paint and polish are again two materials which cause a lot of environmental damage because of the toxic airs that they fume out. So there is something called a VOC product. I'm sorry, which is we would prefer and we would recommend that everybody should start talking and using non-VOC products, because we would want an environment which is safe and healthy, not only for the people who are going to live there, people who are going to actually make that place, the workers, also the people who will inhabit it. So the standard polyester finish and things of that sort that we are talking about, they are extremely harmful and toxic. So when you start looking at sustainable products, you have to start from the base. So what is the material that you're talking about using in your flooring? Is it sustainable? Is it locally produced? Is it environmentally easy to use because of the mining process or whatever it is? Coming to your walls, so how are you going to finish your walls? Is the paint that you're using is VOC paint or non-VOC paint? Going to your ceilings, going to your lighting, where you want to use lighting which are energy saving and all, going to your wood. Now wood also has certain specific wood which you should use, which helps you to be environmentally conscious. So wood, it's a very delicate material, because on one hand it's a natural product, but on the other hand, when you are actually using so much of wood, people have started talking about deforestation and wastage of natural resources. But there are certain specific quality and quantity of wood which is available called FSC wood, which is certified for use only for construction purposes. So one needs to start purchasing and procuring wood also and all these materials in such a way that you are buying it from the right sources, that you know it comes from a source which is genuine, which is sensitive, and which is conscious of the environmental hazards that is involved while manufacturing that product.
Okay, so a lot of things.
Oh, it's a huge. I can write a PhD thesis onto environmental products.
Yeah, it seems so. It's amazing. You have so much knowledge on this. But the misconception of cotton, you cleared that, it was a misconception, because I always thought cotton is good for clothes, so it's good for furniture as well. I never knew about this.
But in fact, Shraddha, you'd be surprised how there are a lot of fashion designers who have actually started looking at alternative fabric options as compared to cotton. And as I said, this linen is one of the most
linen,
purer, and hemp. Yeah, hemp is another one. Hemp is a brilliant product. And hemp is again one of my favorites, because hemp is a product, it's a plant which actually is a self-sustaining plant. It is the only plant in the whole universe that gives back to the earth. So when you actually grow hemp, the soil gets nutrient. It has many more nutrients coming into the soil than taking it away.
Yeah.
And hemp is what? Everybody knows hemp is basically ganja, and it was used, it started being grown in India. Legally right now also hemp is allowed to be grown only into 2 states. I don't know whether you're aware of it. There's Uttaranchal and Uttarakhand. These are the only 2 states who are legally allowed to grow hemp, and that too for medicinal purposes. But the minute you start talking about hemp as a fabric and hemp into paper, wallpapers and all, it opens up a whole new world. And it is a brilliant option. I think people are opening their eyes up, and very soon I think it will get into a stage where people will be wanting to be far more accepting of hemp as a product.
Yeah, many designers are also looking at hemp in their collection.
Yeah. So hemp, banana fabric, linen, these have become very popular choices for alternative to cotton.
Right. So what about silk? Is it good because it gives a very luxurious feel for furniture, for tapestry?
Okay, so silk is good, but as I just mentioned, banana. Do you know, you've seen the kimonos, right?
Yes.
Japanese kimonos. So
Yes.
Japanese kimonos are actually made with banana fabric. They're not made with silk. That's why they're called Japanese silk. So the banana, the core of the banana, the outer fabric of the banana is used for the basket weaving and things of that sort. The inner fiber of the banana plant is actually used to make banana silk. And that's what Japanese kimonos are all made of. And that's why they breathe much better than normal silk. But silk, yes, is still considered as an eco-friendly product because it's naturally made. And it does not require the kind of damage to the earth. So silk is very popular. And Shraddha, let me clear one more doubt. People think that polyester, being a synthetic material, is actually not an eco-friendly product. But polyester, which is made from products of byproducts of the industrial industry. Okay? When plastic is recycled, then plastic is broken into smaller polymers. And then those polymers are used to produce polyester fabric. And that actually is very eco-friendly because you're not needing any new raw materials, A. B, you're using a byproduct of an industrial waste. So that industrial waste is not requiring any landfills to fill up their thing. So it actually becomes eco-friendly. So the conceptions that we have that, polyester is not eco-friendly is actually wrong.
Okay. So when we are looking at curtains or something, if we find a polyester silk blend, it's okay to invest in that?
Yeah. But you should also understand where that polyester is made from or which companies are making it. So whenever I'm buying products, I'm doing a little bit of research onto their product lines as to how are they manufacturing it,
Can you name a couple of companies? Because
no, I can't. That will be off the chat.
Okay, sure.
Okay, I'll just clarify that. We are designers, professional designers, and ethically, we are not allowed to endorse products publicly. So it is it's like how doctors cannot endorse a particular generic brand. They can endorse only the medical thing like they can say that paracetamol is the right medicine, but they can't say that use this company and don't use this company. Similarly, as architects, we have an ethical minding law that we don't endorse products, but we recommend it. So on public platforms, endorsing products would not be an appropriate thing for me to do.
I understand. So sometimes we do need to part with old furniture or other elements of our house. How can we do this in an environment-friendly way?
So ideally, old furniture should be recycled or reused. It is very interesting actually to take old pieces of furniture and give it a new avatar, as one would want to call it on a very westernized language. But if you remodify old pieces of furniture, they can turn out to be far more interesting than one would think about, because you do have limitations, because you have a certain size, you have a certain shape and all. So if you can learn to use those limitations to your advantage, I think it can become a great piece of art by itself. And I know a lot of people, especially very sensitive designers, are actually taking old pieces of furniture and giving it a new look. And I'm sure a lot of y'all will know that I've done that in quite a few houses that y'all may have seen or you may have visited. And we just twist it in such a way that it starts looking contemporary, but it's still very authentic. But if you have to dispose it of, depends what piece it is. If it is wood and it is really got spoiled, then I think one would salvage the wood out of it, or then and put it into such a way, or dispose it off into such a way that it will not get, it would not become a burden onto the environment, but it becomes a part of the environment kind of stuff, you know.
Okay, that's interesting. So with the need to go vocal for local and depend on support the Atmanirbhar Bharat, do you think a lot of things of home decor can be sourced from our own country?
Of course, I think everything can be sourced from our own country. We are actually quite Atmanirbhar as far as our field is concerned. Somehow people still have the desire to bring in certain products from out of the country, which is normal, which is natural. We all like to indulge ourselves at some point or the other, and I don't disagree with that at all. So there is a fair amount of products that are used from outside the country. A simple example, like I'll tell you, marble. Okay, we do not mine any more good quality Indian marble now. We used to 15 years back, 20 years back, 30 years back. I mean, there was no better material than a Makrana marble in the whole world. But we mined it so extensively that now the mines have had to close down because there was no ways that the load could be put into the mines anymore. So we do not get any good quality Indian marble that we would like to use lavishly. So we do need to bring in certain products from outside. Rest of the stuff, we are very easily able to procure everything within our country. In fact, our country exports a lot of stuff which we do not even get into the domestic market, because it's all the best quality saved up for the exports and it goes out into the export trade. And unfortunately, as residents of India or as citizens of India, we don't get the best quality material back. But I think now with the change in the outlook of the entire world, people are all looking inwards, not only in our country, in other countries also, that they're all looking inwards to see how they can procure inwardly. Besides materials, I also say that, you know, we try and use people within the periphery of our own projects. Like, you don't want to bring in people from the other end of the country to be able to come and work here, because we have realized that the need to give local people employment, which automatically improves the local economy and things like that. And we have the skills. It is just that we had not looked enough. And I think most parts of the country have adequate amount of skills, which is actually proved by the fact that thousands of years ago, civilization, some of the finest monuments were made in all over the country. And they were all made by local people. They were not people who were brought in from different parts of the country. And we have fantastic examples from Srinagar to Trivandrum. You'll see the temples and you'll see everything. The monasteries which are there up in Sikkim and all, they're all done locally. So we just haven't exploited local labor enough to be able to, and if they are not well trained, I think as responsible citizens, we should be actually conducting workshops and all to train the labor to be able to make them self-sufficient in terms of their skills, and then help them. So that's the way this Atmanirbhar Bharat is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it will happen. I'm quite confident.
That's so nice to hear that, you know, from a renowned interior decorator, that everything can be sourced in our own country.
Yes,
and
yes.
things can happen. Because recently I was looking for some furniture just before the lockdown, and everything was either, you know, I happened to make a trip to Delhi and everything was either made in, you know, France or Germany, or something was from China. And I felt like, you know, why not Indian? Because some of the pieces that are made here are so beautiful. The textures and the wood is so nice.
Correct. But I think, Shraddha, this pandemic has allowed everybody to sort of open our eyes, you know, and a lot of people have realized the need to actually try and be as loyal to your country as much as possible.
True, totally. So can you suggest what kind of space and lighting is correct for Zoom calls and photography, and how can we create it at home? Like you have a beautiful background at your back. I'm always struggling with backgrounds and light. So how do we create this?
So, this is a tricky question. I think we've all done either. I've probably lost track of how many webinars and Zoom calls and all that we've all been a part of. But the ideal situation of creating the right background actually is to do trial and error. And I've done my trial and error also. So eventually there is one specific spot at home and one specific spot in the office that I know that this works well and the angles work well and all. So that's as far as the Zoom calls are concerned, because you do want to be, see now the impact is, earlier when we were meeting people physically, there is an aura that gets transmitted from person to person. And I think people relate to that emotional aura much more, which we are missing in these Zoom calls. But that is the reason why it's very important for us to be able to portray the right environment that we want to the rest of our people who we are communicating with. Photography, it's not very easy as an answer that I can tell you, but yes, lighting makes a big difference. So you don't want to make sure that there is no light reflecting on your thing. Like I'll tell you personally, I have the biggest problem that I have realized since the lockdown, that my glasses are not anti-reflecting. So you'll see there is a little bit of reflection that comes on my glasses. So whenever I am and wherever I am and I'm going to be on a call or a webinar, I have to make sure that all the lights are switched off in the room. Because even if there is a light in the other end of the room, there is a reflection that comes onto my glasses. So the first thing that I have decided after this lockdown opens up is to get a pair of anti-reflecting glasses so that I can use it for myself. So it's a little bit of trial and error. Like I'll tell you right now, in your frame, I can see a reflection in the television, in your television, because it's a reflecting surface right at the back. So yes. We are not in a studio, we are not into picture perfect places, right. But we try and find the right balance between a backdrop and the light that falls in. Sometimes the backdrop is perfect, but the light falling over there is not ideal. Yes. Daytime light reflections are much more in wherever you are, because you can't block off sunlight unless you have totally 100% blackout blinds and curtains at your places. But it's evenings, it gets a little better, because then you can control the lighting with artificial lighting to bring in the right amount of light where you need it to. So a little tricky, but it's all trial and error and all practical based thing that you have to keep trying again and again.
Okay. So like you said, it's all trial and error. Sometimes you feel that in like a larger family, or if you have a space constraint, you can't really do the trial and error. So yeah. How can you change backgrounds if you're in one bedroom, say, how can you change backgrounds or spaces? Do you just have to change the way you sit and try it out? Or how can
you could become quite imaginative and maybe do some form of screens at the back, or turn your face in such a way that you can look through a window and you maybe can see the tree right at the back. Or if you have an indoor plant, you transfer it towards an indoor plant. So those kind of subtle things will have to get done as trial and error.
Those are nice ideas. So some of us have, if there is some of us have these cluttered spaces in our house which have become cramped up over the years. How can we declutter these spaces?
Nobody will like me when I say what I'm going to say. So throw away what you don't need. Just throw away. Declutter. That's the right word. Declutter. So that you do not, what you don't need. I have read these, I do a fair amount of reading. So I've read this one saying which always stuck with me, that if there is any material that you haven't used for 6 months, means you can live without it. Right. So anything that you feel that you don't need, you haven't used for 6 months, you can actually declutter yourself. But to the other way, of course, this is a very easy way that I'm talking about, but the other way is to organize yourself better. They get very nice organizing shelving systems. They get, especially for wardrobes, especially for shoe cabinets, for stationery. They just roll up or fold down, and it's very convenient. And they are quite easily available on social media, also on websites, and on any kind of digital platform that you just type in shelving systems and all, and they're quite convenient. So if you feel that things are getting overcrowded, the first thing to do is to actually reorganize them. And if you reorganize them and then you see that you have managed to fit in everything, then you don't need to throw anything out.
Yeah. Okay, that's nice. Thank you.
So just to, should I take up some the audience questions, Shraddha? How would you like to go about it?
Yeah, please, you can start.
Okay, there are a couple of questions, there's very interesting ones. Most homes, Kabir Agarwal asks, most homes have fixed furniture. Could you please give an idea of how we can change things around to bring about a freshness during this shift towards work from home?
Hi, Kabir. Yeah, okay. So when you have fixed furniture, it does tend to become a little more difficult, because things are all closed into spaces. They're made for the right place, and they're made for the right area, that we do not have that flexibility so much. However, I mean, just shifting your loose furniture in terms of all your loose sofas and dining chairs and dining tables and things of that sort can actually create a little bit of interest. I like to have a little bit of more loose stuff in our furniture, in our interiors, because that also gives you the flexibility of giving your spaces a new look when you want it. So when you're doing work from home, it's very important to realize that anything that is fixed is not going to be able to get changed. Whatever is free, you can sort of rework around those spaces and then be able to get your little corner that you need to quietly work from home.
Sure, thank you. Shivangi asks, how do we take care of Duco finish side tables?
Duco finish is actually a slightly delicate finish which does tend to scratch or tend to stain. To avoid the scratches, one needs to be careful that there are no sharp objects that brush against it. And stains, it normally, if it's a large stain that it has been there, you can repolish your Duco furniture after a few years, maybe 2 years, 3 years. Repolishing does not take very long. It's a simple process that they actually come and shampoo your furniture with soap and water and with a particular chemical. And when you shampoo it and you clean it up, the furniture starts shining the way it was during its original times. So you can manage to do that. However, other paint finishes, which are polycoat and other finishes, are far more easier to maintain and are less scratch resist proof, less scratch prone. So if you have already Duco finish, fine. If you do not have it and you're thinking about getting anything in paint finish, I would recommend you either look at polycoating or you look at PO. That is easier for you to maintain in longer time frames.
We have a question from Pushpa Shah. She says, please show some organizer items if possible.
I can't do that now because I have to go to the internet. So if you would like, Pushpa, if you can send your phone number or something to any of the organizing committee people, I'll send the link to them and then they can forward it to you.
I'm sharing my email ID. So once she sends me an email, I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, so I'll send you links to these organizing shelves that are there, and you can have a look at them, Pushpa. They work quite well, I'll assure you. In fact, like very casually speaking, I used a lot of these shelves when my daughter went off to college, so we didn't need to make furniture and got her those mobile organizing shelves for her to have her things comfortably put in her dorm rooms.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea actually. For growing kids, they need a lot of organizers. That's
correct.
Very helpful.
So I also attended a workshop recently where they said, vertical arrangement of things where it's also visible and it takes much lesser space. So
That's
that helps to declutter, whether it's clothes or files or anything.
That's right. That's right. So these shelving systems that I'm talking about are mainly vertical shelving systems. They could be ground based, or they could be suspended from the ceilings. So it depends upon what kind of systems you need in what place.
Yes.
So I have another question here by Shilpa Vora. There are some scratches seen on Italian flooring. How can we do it at home? How can I think she means how can we get rid of the scratches?
No, you can't do it at home. You have to repolish it, Shilpa. There is Italian marble is slightly difficult and softer, and when scratches come on top of it, you cannot polish them on your own. You need a person who will come with the specific stones to repolish them. And ideally, we recommend that every 5 years, 5 to 6 years at least, you should get your Italian marbles repolished. Then they will get maintained the way they are required to get maintained.
Okay. Next is Ritu Saluja. I want to create a home office. I have a store that I want to turn into my office. This, what is required to do so? The trouble is it shares a common wall with kitchen.
So even if it has a common wall with the kitchen, are you concerned about the sound, or you're concerned about something else? If it is a sound, if it's a sound that comes from the kitchen into your home office, they do have very nice sound insulating panels and sound absorption panels that you can use to create your home office there. So if it has a separate entry and things of that sort, it should not be a problem.
I had a question, Rupande. It's believed that principles of Vastu help in leading a healthier lifestyle. So in this given current pandemic situation, what is your take on this?
Well, it's Vastu is a very age-old principle that especially Indians have followed for thousands of years. Okay, it goes on a very scientific basis. Now, a lot of those principles are not relevant today. However, we as strong believers of tradition and age-old beliefs continue following it. Vastu was actually laid out when we were building homes, you know, where you have your house to be built, which is on a piece of land. So the orientation of the spaces were planned in such a way that it brings in a lot of light and ventilation and everything. It works. It works to that extent that it's scientifically it works. So we were asked to keep, the Vastu principles say that please do not clutter things into the north and the east. That's because there was a lot of light which comes in the north. So the north light, which is scientifically the best light in the world over, northern light is considered to be the best light. So they don't want Vastu people, the Vastu principles say that please don't have any heavy things in your north and east, because they wanted the light to be bringing in into the house. And remember that time, there was no artificial lighting. So the principles were laid out for any common person to build a house, to be able to bring in that kind of natural elements within their house to ventilate it and to light it. Now, we have thousands of years later brought it into today's day and age, where we try and follow it. Some people follow it very rigorously, some people follow it marginally. Now the problem comes when people are trying to follow it rigorously, and we're talking about apartment buildings where we cannot change a lot of problems. You know, we cannot change plumbing lines, we cannot change window positions, and then we try and adapt it to today's day and age. It becomes very tricky. The principles of Vastu are very strong, they're very scientific, and they have a very good and a very sound base to it. But actually just transferring it or expecting it to translate into today's built furniture or built environment is not appropriate. I hope that answers your question, Nancy.
Yes, it did. Maybe one more question, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
With this whole pandemic now, we are scared to call professional help for regular maintenance. Like she said, marble was spoiled or things like that. So are there any tricks which you could share, maybe for your taps, or some small minute things where, for the next 6 months, your house also looks pretty and dainty and you don't have people coming to maintain it. Anything that you could share with us regarding that?
Okay, so there are a lot of professional products that are available online that you can buy them. Okay, even as you just mentioned taps. So if you will Google in, and you'll find, and I'll give you, if you need, on a 1:1 thing. As I said, I would not like to endorse a particular product, but there are particular chemicals available to clean your taps professionally, so that the chrome plating of your taps does not wear off. But you have to do it in the right way that they suggest. Even polishing your own furniture. You can polish your own furniture with products that are available in the market by doing it yourself. You just need a fabric glove, and you can wax your own furniture or wax your own flooring. But that is physical work. And physically, if you can do it, it would be appropriate, because you do not want, I understand, you do not want any professionals to come in and do things like that. And this is not something unusual or new to the West. So if you will just look back, and if you will discuss and compare notes, most people in the West are used to polishing their own floors. They wax their own kitchen floors. And especially when they have beautiful oak floors or wooden floors, they will wax it. They will also paint their own walls. They will put new wallpaper on their own walls. So it is not something that is not doable. But we as Indians have never opened ourselves to be able to do things like these. So products are available quite a bit. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you start browsing and you start searching, you'll find that you can do everything. You won't need any mystery in the future now.
So I guess we should write on Snigdha's email and whatever we want. So maybe she could forward it, and all of us could get our answers, I guess.
Sure.
Over to you, Snigdha.
Sure.
There's another question from Ritu Saluja. I had got tiles laid on my terrace 4 years back over a layer of waterproofing. Since a few months, the tiles have cracked on their own and are rising and coming off the surface. What can I do?
So, which means, Ritu, there is probably some form of air pockets that are being built below the tile, because the air pressure is making the tile break, or there is certain level of water accumulation. These two are the only two possibilities, that the tiles are caving upwards and they're cracking on their own. And for that, you'll have to remove the tiles to be able to see where the problem is. And once you understand where the problem is, then the solution can be found for it. Because if it's water, it's another solution. And if it's air, it's another solution.
There's another question from Pushpa Shah. Problem with loose sofa covers to protect precious sofas is, if they are loose, they look shabby, and if they are tight fitted, it becomes difficult to use them. What's the way out?
Actually, loose sofa covers are very tricky. I mean, it's a very age-old tradition that most Indian homes have. But if you do get a well-fitted sofa covers, we've done that. We've done it with the right tailors. They can look as snug as fully upholstered sofas. There is a little bit of maintenance that you need to do over there in terms of tucking it in at the right place, or maybe giving it a loose stitch. But you can get a loose sofa cover beautifully fitted without any problems.
I had a couple of questions, Rupandiji.
Yeah, sure.
One is, that I've always heard parents and grandparents saying that heirloom furniture is something that you should never do away with, or it's teak wood or rosewood. How often should one actually look at refurbishment, in a complete sense? I mean, when generations change, you do want a modern feel. But is there sort of like a, time frame that one should look at it from?
I don't think so, Snigdha, because I think it's a very personal stuff. A lot of heirloom pieces are masterpieces that you might want to pass on from generation to generation. And it's a little like having a old sari or a ancient piece of jewelry, that they don't get spoiled. In fact, I have a couple of pieces in my own property that we don't want to part with, and they don't go in the modern contemporary sense. But if you tweak them, they can be beautiful. They can actually become highlights of your project itself, because then you have to restore them and reuse them in the way that they actually are crying for attention, and you give them the attention that they need. And I think if it's old heirloom furniture, I also believe that it needs to be saved to be enjoyed.
That's lovely and very refreshing to hear, actually. Yeah. Another question I had is, there must be many homes which were undergoing renovation or new homes being built, and people who had plans to, start new homes. So what do you do now given the pandemic? Do you, allow the workforce in? What's your view on it? What precautions can you take and restart work?
So most of the places that we work in, I can speak for myself, are places where we do not allow our clients to live there. So if we are going to be refurbishing an old apartment, we request the client to move out for X number of time, depending upon the work and the space and the size of the place. So most of our projects do not have people living in it. That's number one. Number two is most buildings now have an SOP, which is very strongly defined, and you allow only that many people to come in, and that is defined not because they do not want work to continue, because to try and maintain as much social distancing as possible. So for in a site earlier where we could have say 50 people, now our sites have started and we have say only 15 people. So we're working at say maybe 1/3 the capacity. Clients are quite aware that the time frames will get stretched on to maybe 2 times over or 3 times over. But keeping the current scenario, I think it is a sensible thing to do, where you do not you do not have brakes onto the project. Yes. Let it go on with a slightly slower pace, with maybe controlled measures, so that people are, even the other residents of the building are feeling safe, that they do not have a storm of workers coming inside. And there is a certain level of hygiene and control maintained. So I think that's important, because nobody is sure as to when this is going to get completely out. Okay, there are countries that are coming with a second wave of it. So we all have to be careful, and it is going to go on for a while. So 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, nobody knows. But that does not mean that life stops. Also, a lot of these workers are daily wage workers. Well, remember, so they haven't worked for the past 3 months or 4 months, and they have used up most of their savings or whatever they had accumulated. Now it's time that they do need to work. So I have been trying to propagate that people start their work, not because I want work. I may sit at home, but I do understand that that mistri or that karigar or that carpenter who is working, he needs his daily wage. And when he's ready to take that much risk to be able to travel to the site, we are of course also recommending to people that if you are starting work, to try and accommodate them and allow them, the workers, to stay on site, so that it reduces their travel time. It also improves the chances of no outside infections coming in, because once they're inside the building and they have been there for 6-7 days, it's automatically, that there is a certain level of quarantine that has been followed. So to avoid transport as much as possible, we are recommending to them that try and get them space. And a lot of buildings have obliged, because they have realized that work has to go on, people have to start moving into their houses, but at the same time they do not want too much of movement.
No, wonderful. I think I couldn't agree more, because the initial relief that everyone went out to do in terms of helping with ration and all, that enthu will slowly die down. So daily wage earners have to get back into their sustainable livelihoods. So
correct.
Yeah, I've loved your session. I've been taking notes throughout, and
thank you.
I've been trying to note down. There's so much input here. And
thank you so much. Thank you, Shraddha. Thank you, Smita.
Mansi, I would invite you to give the formal vote of thanks for this lovely, engaging session we've had.
Thank you, Rupandeji. Thank you, Shraddha. Thank you to all the members who've taken out time and attended this session. Thank you from I thank you on behalf of MLF today. And Rupandeji, of course, you're a big name in your industry today, and we had a major insight about so many things. And Shraddha, I can't thank you enough, because everybody has questions. Everybody wants to hear what Rupandeji has to say, but to kind of extract everything out, you covered so many topics. So I think that was fabulous, Shraddha. And we've given, Snigdha's given her email address. So whatever queries we'd have, we'd formally send you an email and we could give it to all our members, give your answers to all our members. And I guess we have a lot of people who are inspiring to be like you. And it's nice, especially in trying times like this, where they also get a hand on things which would probably help them 20 years from now. You never know. So I guess this is a trying time for those inspired interior decorators, and this was a fabulous session if they've got a hold of this as well.
Yeah,
So
I was just reading somebody's comment. She's saying that everything is so wonderfully explained. That's from
yes,
and I know.
Absolutely. I think we could
Thank you
touch
so
on
much.
several topics, and thank you. Your depth of knowledge is amazing, Rupandi ji.
Thank you very much, all of you all. It was a
And-
wonderful evening and a great evening to look forward to the next lockdown, which is tomorrow. We'll be able to enjoy today's evening very well.
Thank you, Shraddha. It was
Thank
lovely
you. Thank
having
you
you
so
with
much,
us.
Nisha, for giving me this opportunity. And
Thank
it was
you.
so nice to have this conversation with Rupandi.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank you for
Thank
your
you
time.
so much, all of you all,
Thank
and
you.
thank you to all the participants for coming on board.
Thank you.
Thank you.